Hey, one of the most frequent questions I get asked when I do my miniatures is how I make the fake concrete that I use in my bases. So I figured I'd do a little tutorial. I'm not a professional content creator or anything like that, so I apologize for the rough edges, but we'll at least try to make it informative. What I do is I get this stuff called hardware cloth. You can see it's just kind of, it comes in these big rolls, and it's just this like wire grid that people use for like chicken fencing and things like that. Um, I've got a little box here that I'm going to use as my mold, and I've already cut out a little piece that fits in the box. This process actually takes longer than you'd think, because it takes a little while to get it to be just the right shape. But once you've got a piece like this, we're basically just going to kind of slot it into the bottom, and if you get the shape right, it'll have a little tension against the walls, and you'll be able to kind of lay it flat. We're trying to make this one lay as flat as possible so that we can make the piece as thin as possible. It looks like that's about as good as we're going to get. So the next step is to get some plaster. I use this hydrostone stuff. It's called Perfect Cast, and it's really easy to mix up. It's just 3 parts powder to 1 part water. So let's go ahead and mix some of that up now. The reason the rebar is important is because without it, when we do the process of kind of cracking it up and giving it all of its character and texture, without the rebar, this stuff would kind of just crumble into little pieces, which could be useful, but for the larger chunks that I tend to use for basing material, the extra strength that the rebar provides helps it develop cracks without just coming apart. So I find that it has some of the most realistic properties of concrete that you see in nature. Usually all those big industrial pieces, they always have rebar supporting them. So yeah. Okay, cool. So we got three parts plaster. We're gonna add some water, maybe just a little bit more. I find 3 parts exactly tends to be a little thick. Get our trusty mixing spoon here. We want to make sure that we do a pretty good job mixing this stuff, because any weird lumps and stuff are gonna dry weird. So we'll spend a little time doing this. And we might have to make up more than one batch. I'm just kind of guessing the volume here. The only other thing that we've done here is we've added just a little bit of petroleum jelly to the box as a releasing agent. It'll just kind of make it easier to get the whole slab out once we're done. And I took a brush with some white spirits and tried to get rid of as many of the brush marks as possible, because those will show up once it hardens. Okay, so let's see how good a job this does covering all this. So it looks like we're gonna need to mix up one more batch, and I'll go ahead and do that and pour it in, and I'll get back to you once that's done. Okay, now we've got that all covered. You might have a few small little areas where some exposed rebar kind of sticking out a little bit. It doesn't, not too big of a deal. You're usually only gonna be seeing one side of it, anyways, so you can kind of flip that down, and then sometimes it also you can kind of make it look like it's crumbled away a little bit and some of the rebar's exposed, so it can just add some character. Cool, so we've got that set up, and that's going to need to dry for 24 hours, so that's the long part of the process. So we're just going to set it out somewhere sunny and come back in 24 hours, and then we get to do the fun part, which is kind of smashing it up and getting the usable pieces out of it. Okay, so it's been about 24 hours here, and we've got our slab done. I kind of ripped the box a little bit, freeing this up. So you'll have a little piece like this. You can see on this side, we've got a little bit of the texture from the Vaseline. So you have to be careful, you know, to try to keep that as thin as possible. But you can go in, first of all, some concrete does have these kind of brush strokey, texture to it, so this might be desirable, but you can also go back over this with things like texture paste and things like that to kind of modulate the texture. You see this side's got a pretty nice concrete texture already with, you know, some slight imperfections, things like that. So this will probably be the side that we use that's visible. You can keep it just like this if you want nice big flat pieces, but in this case I want a little more character. Like I might try to keep a big chunk. It's pretty random once you start smashing it, but you know, you kind of direct the force at least a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and smash this one up a little bit. So I'm going to try to maybe like take out this area here where we have this exposed rebar, you know, and add a little character and have that side smashed up. So give this a shot. Cool. Yeah, so you can see getting some really nice fractures here. Just let it come loose like that, and then you'll go in and start clipping away this extra rebar where you don't need it. Let's see here. This part always takes a little while because you kind of go in step by step, separating the whole thing out. But having these, you know, little exposed bits of rebar kind of add to the character of it. You can paint those up to be all rusty. Later you can kind of bend them to add a little more character to the piece. You just keep clipping away. And the nice thing is all of this extra dust and fragments that come off, you can put those in another box, and they make really good kind of debris flock for your projects too. You can sprinkle this in places and kind of ballast freeze it into place, or, you know, use PVA glue. So you can see we've got this kind of really cool like fractured edge here. We've still got some pieces coming off, and you can kind of flex it back and forth a little bit, you know, like this. So now we have this nice cool fracture coming across this way. So you can really add a lot of character. You can kind of do more precise movements, like if you want to chip this really clean edge off here. You know, now we've got a little bit of damage there. You can, this hammer in particular is pretty good for this because it's got this pointy edge. Like if I want to do, you know, more localized pitting like this on the surface. But yeah, and then, you know, if you wanted to, you could clip out this to be its own chunk, or you could keep it attached like that. But what you end up with is some pretty realistic looking miniaturized concrete. See, we gave this one just a little tap, and see you get this really nice fracture here. And because the rebar is there, the whole piece isn't going to just come straight off, you know. So we get these really nice realistic fractures. You can also use smaller tools like these. these wire cutters to kind of go after some of these edges. Like if you got like a little bit too much of a clean edge there, you can go across here and kind of chip that off, give it a little extra character. Like this edge here might be just a little too boring as is, so we can kind of go in and clip away. And then maybe on this side, like we don't like that we've got some exposed rebar kind of coming up through the top, so maybe we'll try to go after that and cause a fracture that we can clip away. Like that. So now we can go after that side and get rid of this excess. Like that. And then all this stuff can be, it takes primer just fine. You know, you could actually, the color, you know, actually has enough interest. You could get away with it probably just like this if you wanted to, but I like to paint this stuff. So I always prime it up and, you know, kind of highlight the edges and stuff. It just makes it look a little bit closer to scale. But yeah, you know, not that expensive of a process, and you end up with like a really nice structural piece of concrete that is going to have a lot of properties that other forms of making fake concrete just kind of lack. You know, you just get really realistic wear patterns and stuff, because I mean it's more or less just concrete with rebar in it, the way that you see in nature, just kind of scaled down. Anyway, I hope that's helpful, and yeah, have fun. Be careful of the sharp wires. I always wear gloves when I'm doing this, just because these things get pretty pokey. And when you're working on your diorama, you know, just make sure that you're keeping an eye out on the sharp wire. Sometimes I like to bend them down, you know, to make sure that they don't poke me. But anyway, that's about it. Hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know.